The countdown is on, just 12 days away from our first exhibition games and our first actual hockey games to discuss as the resumption of play in the National Hockey League will commence on July 28th. Great to have along for some instant analysis our insiders, Chris Johnston and Elliotte Friedman. Gentlemen, a lot to be figured out over these next 12 days. Shed some light, start with you, CJ, on some of the key issues NHL teams, the players, the management are concerned with right now.
Well, this is a massive logistical undertaking. And, the sense I've gotten is, there's a reason last weekend Gary Bettman channeled the Winston Churchill there and said, getting the CBA done and the return to play plan ratified, that just gets us to the end of the beginning. And, I think the real challenge right now is getting the hubs in Edmonton and Toronto all set up, ironing through all kinds of issues, everything from, can they lock down some golf courses perhaps for players to play safely that can be considered part of the bubble. I know in Edmonton that they've been still working on securing some deals with restaurants to help with the catering plan that they're putting in place there. I mean, you say it's 12 days of the first exhibition game. It's 10 days until these teams are supposed to travel into the two cities. You're looking at just with the team parties, a total of 1,200 people, and then you have the extra staff involved on the NHL level to run this. And so, even just down the road from, where I live here is where the Toronto Secure Zone will be. They haven't put up any fencing yet. I mean, there's just a lot going on there. And I get the sense at the top of the league that there's some fatigue setting in with all the Zoom calls and all the logistical things they're trying to work through. And then obviously hoping everyone remains safe in terms of players being tested as well.
CJ and Dave, there's a friend of mine that I knew that his dad's advice to him whenever he would leave the house is don't be an idiot. And it wasn't exactly that, but that's pretty much the message I could say for a family television channel. And I think there's a lot of those conversations kind of going around. Like, CJ, you made the point before we started talking that as of Sunday, the players are basically in lockdown. It's home and it's the rink, and that's pretty much it before they go away. But I think they're really impressing upon each other that if we want this to work, we're going to have to be smart right now. We know we're going to be in a bubble in 10 days, but we have to get there. And I think that's one of the big conversations that's going on among all these teams is let's be smart about this and let's not derail ourselves before we get there.
What's been fun this week, guys, is the teams are back on the ice. Phase 3 started earlier this week, and it's given us some hockey to talk about and some questions. There were some eyebrows raised when you look at the Calgary Flames practice situation and Johnny Gaudreau, Johnny Hockey, not skating out there with the top elite players on the Flames. Any explanation for that, Elliotte?
Well, there was some rumors that he showed up out of shape or that they were mad at him. And Brad Treliving, the general manager of the Flames, went public earlier on Thursday to say that wasn't the case. Like, this is not a discipline issue. Look, we're all guessing here. The League and the Players Association have created a situation where there's going to be a lot of speculation. That's what they've decided to do, not confirm everything, so people have to guess. So here's my guess, and this is why that Johnny Gaudreau is skating with, quote-unquote, the B group. The Flames have a couple of guys, I think it's 4 now, who aren't able to skate on a day-to-day basis. It says to me that if any of those players are not skating because they've tested for COVID positive, that maybe they're worried about the tracing and people who might have come into contact with those players even before they started camp. So they're trying to isolate it as much as they can. And that's why there's no crossover between the two groups, that if you have someone who's tested positive and the other people around them are testing negative, don't mix it up, because that only increases the amount of people that you could expose it to. So do I know that's the truth? No. Do I suspect that's the truth? Yes. But I don't believe that there's any disciplinary action against Gaudreau. As Jeff Ward, the coach, said at the beginning of the camp, there's some things that happen before we can control. That's my educated guess as to what we're talking about here.
And that's going on elsewhere too, Elliotte. I mean, we saw at the start of the Pittsburgh Penguins camp this week, they had 9 players that weren't involved on the first day, and they actually did get dispensation from the league to have a bit of an announcement around that. And they identified, contact tracing as an issue, that those players had been exposed to someone that had in close contact that had produced a positive COVID test. I mean, this is the start of a brave new world. And, we saw it in Boston as well on Thursday where David Pastrnak and Andre Kasha were both deemed unfit to play or practice, in this case for the Bruins. And unfortunately, speculation goes along with that. But I do think we should caution from what we do know that certainly does not mean all these players themselves have tested positive. I think the teams are being very, very careful, especially now, about 2 weeks out from the competition stage beginning, about keeping everyone separate in cases where they've had one positive test.
What's interesting, guys, is generally it's the middle of July. We'd be talking about, oh, this free agent signed there, this free agent signed there, that all these things are happening. It's all going to be compressed into the fall. It's going to be very interesting to see how this all shakes down. Elliotte, what should we be keeping an eye on as far as teams, management, and personnel?
Well, one of the things I've been kind of asking Dave is if you go back to 2004-05, which was the last time the CBA was really, really redone and bringing the cap in, Doug McLean always used to talk about how he signed the first big deal out of that with Rick Nash. And people got mad at him. They said, you gave him too much money, and why did we just have a lockout? And Doug's response was, well, shut up. He's my star player, and I'm going to take care of him. So one of the things I've been asking people is, what's the first big deal that's going to come out of this? What's going to be the next trendsetter? And, there's a few people who look at the UFAs, whether it's Hall or Pietrangelo or Krug or Braden Holtby. But one of the names I get a lot because he's one of the next big RFAs that has to sign is Matthew Barzal. And, I can't say for sure one way or the other what's going to happen here. But, just asking around and asking people, what's the trendsetter deal going to be like Rick Nash in 2005? I get a lot of Barzal answers. So I'm curious to see what that's going to be.
Well, and if it's not Barzal, Elliotte, two that I would look for is the two in Vancouver. And what's different with, of course, Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes is they don't necessarily have to sign these contracts before next season, but, the window is now officially open for them to do business. And I would think both are in a position to perhaps reset the market or change the way things are done. Maybe we see them go short term, the way some players like Austin Matthews did on his second deal in Toronto, but still get big money. And so, if it's not Barzal, I could see one or both of those players putting something new up there to give the future RFA something to think about.
Man, Jim Benning is going to be one busy gentleman. Remember, he's got those RFAs you're talking about. He's also got Markstrom, Toffoli, Tanev. He's got a series of pretty talented UFAs as well to consider as far as bringing them back to Vancouver. It's exciting. We're talking hockey, and we're just days away, right? 12 days away from the return of NHL hockey, and what a great first night as well, guys. We have, the Battle of Pennsylvania, which is going to start things out, and we have Toronto, Montreal, and the nightcap, the Battle of Alberta, albeit exhibition games, but finally some real hockey to sink our teeth into. Thanks, guys.